Spook,
Yes!
what did you do to your arm?
I think I've watched the replay one too many times.
Oh.
What do you know about calluses?
Welcome back to the Collingwood Rant for 2024. I'm Sly.
And it was a joke about wanking Spook.
It wasn't. This is going to be a special edition of the Rant dedicated to our flags.
It's going to be an addition.
No, it's special.
Oh, are we going to have George Lucas direct it?
No, maybe we'll get someone... No, anyway, I think you knew where that was going. 3 flags in our lifetime.
Isn't that an achievement?
It is actually amazing.
You're only 23.
Yeah, this is what they've done to me. We've won 2 in the last 13 years.
That's a good start for Collingwood.
But let's look at them. So if you were to rate them from third favourite to first favourite, your third favourite would be...
2010 now.
Yeah. So 2010's the same as mine.
Yep.
Going to that game, we were the dominant team for the second half of the season. We smashed Geelong in the prelim. We smashed Bulldogs in the qualifying final.
Great days.
We'd smashed St Kilda in the second half of the home away season, even though Travis Cloke was suspended. We were just a powerhouse, had the press and all that sort of shit.
How'd the grand final go?
How did you feel about that game going into that grand final? First, the draw, that is.
You asked me to remember something from 13 years ago.
Yeah.
Well, going into a Collingwood grand final, can there be one thing you're thinking? How are we going to fuck this up?
And we almost did.
We gave it a red hot crack.
So we dominated pretty much the first half. We squandered chances. Travis Cloke missed a couple of shots, one set shot and one on the run. Probably would have iced the game by half-time.
I think if you nailed that one at half-time, that would have probably put enough doubt into St Kilda that they would have probably come out behind the 8 ball.
Yep. And then the second half, it really was just like we stopped. It's very reminiscent of that other grand final where we stopped only 5 years ago. But it looked like instead of going out there and saying, let's smash them by 10 goals, it was like, we're 5 goals ahead, let's not fuck this up. And then they proceeded to almost fuck it up. Mm-hmm. And it was pretty frightening. I know people talk about the Stephen Milne bounce that he should have attacked it. I mean, I saw an interview on the AFL website a while ago dedicated to that grand final. Brendan Goddard, Nick Maxwell game. It's actually a lot further than you realise from him, so he couldn't have actually just grabbed it. It bounced a while ahead. But
did you see that moment in slow motion? I heard a heartbeat and a ticking clock.
The one thing I'll say of that grand final was the goal, the mark Goddard takes to put him in front. It's one of the best grand final marks you'll ever see, and it's never replayed because St Kilda lost, ultimately. I mean, they drew that, but then they lost the following week.
Oh, well.
But the disappointing thing I think about that grand final was there to be won. No one really stood up to win it, except Nick Maxwell's the one who tried to do stuff.
With that big smother it.
Oh, he did he did various things. I mean, he smothered the ball on the line, then he intercepted the mark, which launched the offensive, which got our last goal.
Yeah.
But, you wanted like one of the stars of the side. That side had plenty of stars to actually stand up and win the game for us, and not one of them really did it. And now it's probably nerves or whatever the shit. I mean, Dale Thomas was really good. Still Sidebottom was really good. Pendle's had bloody gastro that week. He lost 6 kilos.
Yeah, you think now you've got the benefit of obviously knowing what happened the following week. That was the aberration, that second half of that final series. And it has to be nerves or something. It's just like, you're that close to the prize, then you can almost touch it. You see it in tennis a lot of the times. There are a couple of match points.
You're bringing up Medvedev.
And you suddenly collapse. I mean, mentally, you just obviously... you start thinking about it or what it is, and it starts making you make the wrong decisions, or you start getting nervous about, what if I fuck this pocket? You sort of start overthinking things a bit, and I think clearly we got into that frame of mind. But I think conversely it worked well for us, because clearly the next week we didn't.
Well, how'd you feel about going in that week? Because I remember that game... after the draw, it was like, fuck, and then...
I reckon that's close to the angriest I've ever been in my life after that game, because I think that week for me, like the build up to a grand final for me is a harrowing experience, like most Collingwood supporters.
Yeah, I was the same.
I think just you didn't get any release one way or the other, and I was that pent up and angry. I could have murdered half the population of the world. Leading into the next week was an easier week than that first one, but that Saturday night, it took a while to come down. It's actually one of my mates who started sort of thinking about it logically about, well, we've got another chance. We haven't lost it, we haven't won it, but we can have another crack at it. And I think that sort of then became that latching on thing that you started to console yourself a little bit about, okay, well, he's right. We haven't fucked this one up.
Well, the thing, I was just saying, I was like, what the fuck? And then within about the next 48 hours, I was like, you know what, I've lost this in my head. Like, watching that happen, I was like, you know what, I've already lost it. And then for the rest of the week leading into that second, the replay, I was like, I feel fearless now because I've already lived the fucking horror of losing it. And it felt like the players also might have done that, because they realised, well, that's the fuck up. Now let's just go out and play our game. I know I saw Sly and Spook at one stage, and he said they had a lot of really sore players going into that replay. We've talked about we beat a club that's even more tragic than us in grand finals, and there's probably an element of truth in that. But going into that, the replay, I mean, we've talked often about the Heathshaw smother on Nick Rewalt. There's a lot of sort of little things that were just going out. Even the third quarter, they were coming hard at us. And I think they hit the post once and then they missed another time. And everything sort of kept working for us. Even like stuff like Didak's smother that just lands straight next to him and then he snaps the goal. You just sort of felt, it's all going our way now. And that second week reflected more truly where the club stood for that year. It just took us 2 weeks to realise it.
Yeah, definitely.
But the one thing I'll say in terms of it being the third favourite, I look back at that flag, and the one thing that really sours it for me now is all the shit that sort of, part of it's come out, and there'll be more of it that comes out eventually of the succession plan, but there was so much angst between major players in that arrangement that it was just sort of a time bomb that was lit up. And then you look at, like, I know there's people who say, oh no, that squad, that was it for them. That was all they had, that one shot, which I find farcical.
No. I've mentioned this before in the rant, but you watched On the Couch, I think it was, with Mike Sheehan, and he started banging off the numbers of how young the list is, and he goes, it's a scary proposition for the rest of the competition. Well, ultimately that didn't prove to be the case, but it should have been. We should have been, and I think we've discussed this before endlessly. I still think we should have been the Hawthorn of that era. We should have been topping up, and we probably could have won 2 or 3.
Yeah.
Easily.
I think the club probably feels that too. And this is what I said when I look back. I mean, Buckley's spoken about him and Malthouse weren't speaking toward the end of 2011. There were players who actually were petitioning or wanted to bring up a petition to keep Malthouse on. So, and then you look at what followed, after 2011, that just the club really stagnated and then it went to total shit. It sort of sours that flag because you realise they really fucked this up. They had a really good opportunity.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't blame Buckley for, keeping them to a contract that he signed. Equally, I don't blame Malthouse, even though he signed a contract to, leave in 2 years. After he'd won the flag, I don't blame for him going, you know what, I'm actually doing pretty good this job. You should probably keep me on. The guy blames Eddie Maguire for just creating this impossible situation for everyone. But fucked it up for both Malthouse, Buckley, and then for all the players in terms of having to deal with that.
Oh, definitely. I mean, if it ain't broke, they'll go out and try and fix it. I mean, at that point, the winning the flag should have completely torn up the agreement that was in place. And you ride this wave as fucking long as you can, but not at Collingwood. I think it's funny just to fast forward to now, and they're talking about the prospect of us going back to back this year, and we haven't done that since about 1928 or some ridiculous
35, 36.
Yeah, whatever. Something like that. You did the research. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
But it is like it's a 76-year gap or something like that. And you think, well, that sort of sums it up a fair bit.
It's 90.
How much have we, not that we had a great run of winning them, but the ones that we did win, we've completely befuddled ourselves post that and not really gone in with the right attitude. I think we like winning them. We like over celebrating the win, and that's it. We're done. It's different though this year, which
we'll get to that a bit later. Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And this is it kills me too. Like, I've argued with people and they're going, well, Malthouse signed a contract and you should have stuck to it. And it's like, well, Brodie Grundy signed a contract, where's he now? Adam Treloar signed a contract, where's he? It's fine to sign it and go, this is what we project is probably going to happen, but revisiting it at some point if it's no longer suiting, what's going on at the club. And once they won that flag, they really should have said, well, is this something we need to stick to at the moment?
And clearly the fans there, as you said before, the fans of something going on were being fanned. Is that the right saying? Flamed?
I don't know.
The fans are flamed? the fans. But during the acceptance speech, Malthouse made that statement about, they're my boys, Ed, and I love them.
Boys, yeah.
I mean, there's a very direct and pointed statement about where things were at. Clearly, he had no fucking plan at that point to want to go on with this. And rightly, he shouldn't have worried about it. He should have been kept on for a couple of years as head coach. And you look at it, as much as Bucks is a favourite son, he just sort of said, look, mate, we're not going to rock the boat on this one.
Yeah,
either off your trot or sit in the back seat.
Yeah, I look 100% agree, and it's frustrating that, we did speak to a leading journalist who felt like we weren't that
Mark
good
Robertson.
a list. No, I said journalist.
Is that the moon?
We did speak to a leading
It's a
journalist.
funny video, watch it.
Yeah, who felt like that our list wasn't as good as, what people thought. And I'm just thinking, you're fucking kidding, aren't you?
Yeah, that was in reference to 11.
Oh, 10, 11. I mean,
And
11 they strengthened the list with Taryn and Cracker, so I'm not sure how it got worse from
No,
that point.
but the point was I think it was also in comparison to Geelong at the time as well. But I still think we were a far superior side.
Well, if you look
we derailed ourselves.
I mean, moving a little bit ahead, you look at 11, we lost that first game we played to them. That was when Pendlebury's advantage was disallowed. That would have been the goal that won the game.
Yep.
The final round, they obviously went out with the wrong attitude.
That was a fuck up. I think everyone would have to concede in hindsight. You just can't treat something that playing a potential opponent in the final series. You can't go in there and treat it like it's a dead rubber.
And some of the players have said that. So, and I have no doubt that Chris Scott said to Geelong, to his players, we're going to play these guys in the finals. You scar them.
It's the difference between the hunter and the hunted.
Yeah.
Yeah, you Geelong want to win this fucking thing. They're going to go out there and treat it like it's a test of how they're going to go in the final. They must have come out of that just thinking it was a bit of a joke.
Yeah,
which it was.
Yeah. So I mean, but people say like we weren't as good as Geelong, we weren't as good as St Kilda. Well, St Kilda we beat 10 the second time we played them. We drew them. We beat him in the grand final, and we beat him both times we played him in 11. So we're fucking quite clearly better than them. Geelong beat us the 3 times in 11. Like I'll take that last home and away game away from it. I think there's mitigating circumstances in the first matchup. But in 10, we smashed him in the prelim. We beat him the second time. We played him. We beat him in 12 also. So, like, they weren't miles ahead of us or anything. No. It was just mindset, a lot of it. And as I said, players, they talk about, like, they wanted a petition to keep Malthouse. Malthouse and Buckley weren't talking at that stage. So, and there's a lot more of his shit will eventually come out. Sort of moving away from the flag. But they're just sort of, like, I think that's also illustrative of, like, you actually look at, like, there's all that shit that's associated with the 210 flag. And it all comes from that fucking succession plan, which also, again, I'm not criticising him, but Buckley ended up clearing out the list. And he cleared out like 8 premiership players, which is, I don't know what the turnover average is for premiership teams when they're clearing out players, but that's
can't imagine it's
lot.
that.
Yeah. And then a couple others like, Ben Johnson and Darren Jolie and Alan Didak who left. I don't think they left on the best terms with Buckley either. So
no. Potentially they could have left because of Buckley.
Or potentially. But there, so you look at that 210, that was the one where I looked and think, this is built to fucking dominate the next 3, 4, 5 years. Particularly with the expansion clubs coming in taking draft picks. And that stupid sub rule meant, Didak could have played 5 years just as a fucking professional sub. The older players could have been carried for longer and shit like that. And they just fucked it all, which sort of leaves you a bit of a sour taste when it comes to 210.
Yeah, look, it was great to win, but it still feels like a massive missed opportunity. It should have been the catalyst for something.
Yeah.
Something big. And that one's always going to grate on me, the after effect of it.
Yeah, totally agree.
I don't think we would have been better served losing in that first one either and having
not with the circumstances.
I think that would have completely broke the club. I think if it was fractured at that point going into that grand final, losing it the week before wouldn't have helped the situation. I think it just would have accelerated the inevitable, and that destruction that was wrought with the succession plan would have probably instigated a year earlier.
It's historically, I think it'll be remembered as the worst decision in this club's history. It just a massive fuck up, and I understand they signed whatever they signed early in 2009 when the circumstances are different. But again, you fast forward 18 months, everything's changed. You would have needed to revisit it. Second favourite flag out of the 3.
1990.
Yeah. So we grew up the same era. We saw the Hayfie losses. We inherited the Collingwobbles. Those grand finals, obviously, we weren't at 64, 66. 70, we were tiny, would have missed that. 77 twice, 79, 80, 81. Interestingly, I was reading Richard Stremski's Kill for Collingwood a little while ago. and they actually mentioned the 81 grand final, and they said, I can't remember who told them, but like they said Dathan Parkin, the Carlton coach, at 3/4 time of the Carlton game, told his players, sit down guys, they're going to lose it for us. So he could see they were unravelling, so and that was again fucking...
You didn't have to be Nostradamus back then, though.
And then similarly, like they talk about the flags, the 70 at halftime were 7 goals up, and they were celebrating already. 77, 3/4 time, they came on, they celebrated. You know, Hafey had to tell the administrator, shut the fuck up, it's not over yet. You know, 81 administrators came on, they were ripping into players. Forrald Merritt took a shot at Ricky Barham, which Tony Shaw said... Well, it's Collingwood. So we grew up with all that bloody angst.
What was it born from? Is there a moment?
Yeah. Then you get to 1990. So Lee Matthews took over in 86. He took over about 3 games into the season from memory from Bob Rose. He was meant to sort of serve out as an apprenticeship for another year, but then take over. But Rose was done. Matthews came in. 86, they just missed the finals. 87, they had a lot of injuries. They played a lot of young players. I can't remember where we finished. It was like 3rd last or something. 88, we finished top 3, but we bombed out in straight sets. 89, we finished like 4th, and then we bombed straight out. Melbourne both times knocked us out. 90, there was probably even the feeling in 90 that Lee Matthews, if he didn't do anything that year, he would have been moved on. And
was there a succession plan involved?
Yeah, I think they were going to bring... I'm trying to think of a player of that era.
Tony Shaw?
Mark Williams. I don't know. Mark Williams, that probably would have been a good trip. Yeah, so 1990... I don't know what the expectation was. I don't really remember. Like, I think we were going to be thereabouts, but going into the second half of the year, we started to click into gear and look dangerous.
Yeah, that period was there was a lull in my interest in Collingwood. It was background noise. I think that era of all those losing grand finals as a kid, it did break me for a while. So when we made, I don't really remember the final series or anything like that. But when we made the grand final, I remember my girlfriend at the time said, do you want to go? We'll get tickets. And I said, no, I can't do it. I can't. And I ended up watching it at a friend's place. And it was stunned disbelief, I think, is the... I didn't know how to react because I've never actually... That's the first time I got to react to a win, and there was no elation or anything. It was just... I think it was just shock. I had all those moments pre-planned as a kid about how I wanted to walk into school and strut and be the kid that, you know, wears the Collingwood jumper.
So 1990, you would have been about year 9?
I've been in year 9 for about 6 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just like, you know, I'm a young adult at that stage, and you just wasn't sure, what do you do? I remember I rang the old man up and just said, I can't believe they've done it. And he was pretty excited. I remember that. But yeah, it was just it was stunned.
Yeah, so that
stunned disbelief.
Era I was going to games with my older brother and his crowd, and he had a crowd of like 20, 30 people. So these were all...
It's a big crowd. It's a gang.
Yeah.
Well, they the Warriors?
They were at Vic Park. But you know, that was a generation, you know, about 10 years older than me. And
the Scars? What were the Scars like?
They were really scarred. So they were scarred.
Was it when you were with them, was it like that scene in Born on the 4th of July when the crackers go off and everyone's flinching?
No, I don't remember that scene. But like, I was talking to my brother, he still rates 90 because of the relief as his favourite of them. But like...
Which brother?
Lou. Also known as the uncle.
Or Albano.
Not quite. Yeah, but...
Is he still wearing the rubber bands?
No. We smashed Essendon in the prelim, or the second semi, sorry, and then like I was a little bit confident, and that first quarter was like, fuck, get a goal. We're dominating. We just could not get a goal, and then Dacos got that goal, and I remember Gavin Brown goes, it was a massive relief.
It's a freakish one. It's a good way to sort of to break the ice.
Well, that's what he said. He goes, you know, he talks about it in that documentary, the final story. He goes, oh, you know, Dacos got that, and I just realised, hang on, we got this guy. He can do those sort of things, and that just was a massive pressure relief. And then there was the fight at quarter time, and Brown went down. It was like, oh, well, that's the wrong player to lose. Back then, there was no concussion tests or anything, so he went off, and Matthews was screaming at Terry Danaher that he's going to come back on. And the second quarter, we just smashed him. And there's that famous story of it. I mean, I say it was Matthews, but I've heard it's attributed to Mullane, that he said, just play the fucking ball. They're going to play a lot of frees in this second quarter to get control. Just play the ball. And if they play the man, we'll get on top. And we smashed him in that second quarter. And I remember, like, from that, it was just like, all right, just third quarter, just fucking keep that lead, and we'll win. Because it was always right, you know, because of the history that would establish a lead and then they'd whittle away, which happened in 210. And then we'd just panic. But it didn't. We just fucking ground them. And again, it's one of these ones we had a bit of luck. I think Simon Madden had a shot and he kicked it into the man on the mark and that. So there's sort of things that happen. It's like, okay, it's fucking going to be our day. And there's that story that you tell often about, like, Tony Shaw got up pre-game and said to the players, I've played in 2 losing grand finals and not playing in the third. And you see when they come out, they were fucking like...
Yeah. No, I think that, again, there's the benefit of those losses worked for that group. I think... was it 2002? Was it Freeborn? Was the only
the North from North, yeah.
And I think Malthouse dragged him into the group at 3/4 time and tried to give him a rev talk about what it meant to win. I think it wasn't the fucking right time to talk about that.
Well, I think it fucked up because Freeborn goes kick it to Wayne. Malthouse goes, he's at North, you idiot.
Yeah, it was great winning at the Kangaroos. Yeah. But I think you want to hear those stories before about it's not fucking great to win these things. It hurts a lot more to lose them.
Yeah.
And I think that's your motivation. It's not the elation. I think you can be elated for a lot of things. Watching a good movie, the Disney Star Wars, for example.
It's not a boating accident.
Yeah, but you can get elation from different points, many different things. But the agony of defeat is just something that, if you can have that framed in your mind as something you want to avoid, it's a strong motivator, I think.
I think that 90s side too was really mentally tough with Tony Shaw, fantastic leader, very underrated in the Collingwood echelons, but especially as a leader. Then you had guys like Mullane and, Kelly, Christian, Banks, Barwick. They were sort of really mentally strong players, and they really play that way. It's the side, and similar with 210, I think, because both those squads didn't go on and realise the potential. They're not remembered as favourably as they should be. For a lot of them, that was the peak of their careers, and then they sort of went downhill for whatever reasons, for injury. I mean, McGon, I always say McGon was an elite midfielder, but people don't remember him as that due to injuries and off-field indiscretions, and then up at Carlton and shit like that. They were really good players, but they just sort of went backwards for whatever reasons. But it was a real mentally strong side. And I actually think that year, the way they set themselves up, they would have smashed anyone. And like people go, you're lucky you didn't play Hawthorn. I reckon we would have beaten Hawthorn. Then somebody will say, oh, well, they smashed you by 14 goals in round 16 or whatever it was. That was the week after we'd played Essendon. It was the first live televised game. And the following week, we got smashed by Hawthorn, and Essendon lost to Carlton, who was shit at the time. It was just like that game, we just fucking took everything out of them. I reckon in that final series, we would have just beaten anyone. Because you see when they go on, it's just like, nah, this is fucking ours. We've had all the misery. We're going to fucking win one.
Tim Watson talked about that in that doco too. That he said that when they ran onto the ground, you could see it in their faces. They were fucking serious. I don't know what Essendon were doing. Well, they were joking or something. I think they were juggling at one point. When was your comfort point in that game?
I was pretty comfortable from the start of the fourth quarter.
When you knew we wouldn't lose.
I was pretty comfortable fourth quarter. I always go into these games, regardless of what I say, I always feel like we can win. So regardless of it is like 202, 203, I feel like we can win it. And I wait for us to turn it on. And that day was like, these guys are not going to fucking lose it. That third quarter, I had to get past that. Like, that was the one where I thought they could get it back. And then probably a little bit into the fourth quarter, it was like, okay, so it's going to be 2 unassailable leads, particularly in that area for them to kick 6-7 goals, especially on the day where they've only kicked 5 up to that point. So they'd have to double their output. But I guess ultimately I wasn't relieved until fucking the siren went, and then you worry. It's like there's a funny story in 210 after we won, and then shortly after oh great, we've won the flag, and then I don't know, in the weeks leading up to 210, after 210, it was like, oh, there's a story of a club using human growth hormone, and like it'll be us, won't it? It'll be us. We'll get the flag taken off us. So I kept waiting for something like that to happen, but it's probably sort of
human growth. I mean, what gave it away? The guy in lab coats that were on the boundary line. No, I think for me, when Barwick goaled, that was that moment that I felt I could relax, and it's a similar thing in the 10 grand final when Daisy Thomas kicked that goal, and I think that's the moment where they showed.
The Harry O'Brien.
Who?
Or Horatio Lumumba.
Eddie was tearing up in the thing, and I think that was the moment I relaxed in that one. I thought, well, we can't fuck these ones up at this stage. Surely.
Yeah, who knows? It's interesting because I actually, a lot of his grand finals, like in the 81, like I waited for that same thing, and going into the third quarter, like Mark Williams' goal put us 20 points up, and he did like a smother and he rose and he kicked a goal. It was like, we're going to win this. And then they got the next 2 goals and we looked fucked. And so you look for those peaks and troughs in momentum. And sometimes when the momentum turns, you go, okay, we've got to turn it back, And that happened a lot in last year's grand final. So both those games, like the draw, different, because you could see the momentum swung and then we were really struggling against it. But in 90 and 210, the replay, it was like, no, we have control of momentum the whole time. And they're the ones trying to fight it and turn it around, and they just can't do it because things are just going our way. So that leaves... any final thoughts on those two?
No.
So that leaves 2023 as your favourite?
Is it?
Is it?
I think so. Yeah, look, I think this one's special in terms of these are the sorts of games traditionally we lose at those moments. And there was plenty of moments where those moments could have been moments, but we rested it back pretty much straight away.
Let's backstep a bit. So prelim, McStay does his knee. No, sorry, a GWS player does McStay's knee. It wasn't McStay who did it. That would be a report if it was his head.
Yeah, that was the first major concern because he was pretty good in the final series, more than pretty good.
The speculation about Adams, whether he was dropped or whether he was injured, but he was out.
You think the fact that he packed up his toys and left might have told you something?
Yeah, we'll talk about that in the future, Rant. So that week, then you go into that grand final. I think Nathan Murphy was probably BOG until he got knocked out.
Yeah.
So I was a little bit disappointed in Nathan Murphy because he sort of went off. He passed a concussion test and he said, but I had like blurred vision. That's usually a symptom to me that I might get concussion later. I might develop.
Yeah, look, it's a funny thing because he still could have come on and realised within 10 minutes he was not right. Now, is it that sort of ultimate sacrifice thing where you think I could actually be a detriment if I can't see properly? If he leaked 2 or 3 goals, we could be having a completely different round.
I'll take it a different way. I mean, the thing with Murphy, I mean, I know of concussion because I recall Roughhead was concussed years ago and Maynard was trying to send him off and he wouldn't go off and because he was so concussed, he just had no idea. What I'm saying is Murphy should have went on, king hit a few players, and then got subbed off. So it was my concussion. I really didn't know what I was doing.
Like the Hanson triplets.
Yeah, that would have been good. But he was almost BOG.
Yeah, and I remember thinking at the time that when he went off and stayed off... That's probably game over. I don't see how we can be one massively good key defender down and then win it from here. But boy, did they prove you wrong.
And then you get that second quarter, the first 10-15 minutes, they just dominated us. And I was like, shit, they're going to establish a lead here, and that's just going to be the lead for the game. Yeah. We'll spend the whole game chasing it. We'll get, 2 free goals in, they'll kick another 2, it'll go back and forth.
What was the biggest lead, though, for them? It was 15 points, wasn't it?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the replay, as you know, with my hands, not long ago for the 984th time. And you're watching that and you're thinking, it's funny how you don't really absorb how little that lead was. It felt enormous at the day. It actually felt like, I remember sitting there thinking, it feels like a 40-point lead. We just stopped and they kicked 3 in a row.
Yeah, they basically got the first 2 in the first couple of minutes.
Pretty quickly.
I blame Jack Ginnivan for
it sort of felt like that's it. I remember thinking, we had a red hot crack. At least I can go home early now. But then we just kept pegging it back.
I got to give Chris credit because he got that shot from about 50 out on an angle. It's actually one other interesting thing I got to say. And then they brought Frampton in to play as a defensive full forward. And I saw, and this is not a shot at the person who wrote it, but I saw someone post, well done to McRae for thinking innovatively and laterally in using Frampton like that, whereas Malthouse never would have done that, which I disagree. If Malthouse did that with Cloak in 203, played him up forward. And I look at that and I think it's a real fine line between genius and madness, because if we had lost, the narrative around Frampton would have been totally different. It would have been, why do they fucking play Frampton full forward? So the context changes just by that 4 points. It would have been completely different.
The cupboard's pretty bare there at that stage too. Johnson was injured with a broken something.
Yeah, broken wrist or something.
Kruger was massively probably underdone.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm just saying the narrative determines the context, and the result was like, because we won, it's a masterstroke. If we'd lost, it would have been who the fuck would have fought Fran that should be full forward.
think it's also tactically it is superb because you're making the most of what you've got, and you're playing him in a probably a role that wasn't expected as a negating forward.
At this point, I think he probably could have ended up with 3 goals. You know, he got his hands to a number of them.
That's a good point. He probably deserved it. But the same with McCreary as well. There's these 3 goals he probably should have had as well, but history will say that they didn't get them, and who are we to argue with history?
So, I mean, you talk about like sort of, if you look at that, you lost your full forward, you lose a key defender early in the game. I thought the umpiring was pretty shit against us. I know people could point at that one advantage they weren't paid, but I thought there were some really bad ones against us. That's usually the sort of narrative that accompanies the side that beats us in the grand final, and actually we did it this time, and like a really close game. I think we'd won a close one since 1902 in the grand final. And
it was a smallest winning grand final margin in a long time. I did pick up on that in the replay commentary the other day. It's one of those things I've heard it a few times and just haven't really absorbed the words. Yeah, I was stunned to hear that the other day.
Well, it just sort of, you had all this sort of shit seemingly go against you. And this is credit to McRae and his team, which is just the mentality is whatever happens, you just keep marching forward. And I think in the past, you go back to 2002 when Cloak was reported suspended, 2003 where Rocker was suspended.
Those distractions.
Carmen suspended. But it's not just distractions, like everyone runs around going, oh, fuck, that's it. We're lost. Which is why I keep sort of, when I say with 90, Mullane playing that series with a broken thumb, made sure there was no excuses. And he set the standard there. So
Didac with the torn pectoral muscle in 10.
And again, that's sort of like, you determine what the narrative, but I think too many times we've played the narrative of things are against us, so we're fucked. And this is one time, we talked about, or you're talking about earlier, you look at like the 2 other flags, 90 and 210, I would have expected both those squads to have a period of 4 or 5 years of being up there. And they both fucked it up. And this is the team, or the list, because of the age profile, I would have thought, this is the one where you don't think there'll be longevity, because you got some side bottom and Pendles and Howe and all that. It's got older players. But this is the one that actually seems like it might have the most longevity. I'm not saying they'll win another one, but they're one where you feel like they're in good hands, that they're not going to just drop away mentally, psychologically, that they are going to stay up there and be competitive. So, credit to the existing team behind it, because it was so un-Collingwood, a game.
Oh, it's still... I think I've thought about it nearly every day since we won, in one way or another, at moments or feelings or something will bring me back to it, and it's just brilliant. It really is just honestly brilliant. The manner that we won, everything I said at the start of this is it's un-Collingwood like. Yep. And this is the things that we've been screaming about for decades, about the cultural changes that the club needed to make. Now, the important thing is you just don't do it for 1 year and revert back to norm. They've got to maintain this new Collingwood and keep going. And I think we've got probably, we should have a crack this year, because I think this is probably the last crack for a couple of years. I think we have to go backwards a little bit and build
a lot of
back
it will
forward
depend
again.
who sort of comes up. If you get Finley McRae really sort of jumping up, then that might mitigate the loss of a side bottom. I'm not saying it,
but you're going to probably almost have to factor in a year or two of growth and development as well.
Oh, yeah,
not just fill in that spot.
Yeah, I mean, it sort of just depends. But I sort of was looking at you go back to the 206 to 210 squads where they lost Buckley and Burns and Lacuria and Wakeland and Clement and Rocker and all that, but they almost sort of had a seamless transition. I mean, they had a couple of years where they dipped a little bit, 208 and stuff like that, but then they also had these years like 209 where they made a prelim, 207.
Yeah, I reckon that dip will be very small as you build back up. But they're big shoes to fill, the likes of Howe and Sidebottom and Pendlebury, and he probably won't go till he's in his 50s though.
Yeah.
These days, and there's who else is aged? Mitchell.
Mitchell.
Chris Powell's 31 or something.
He's still in late 20s.
Is he?
Yeah.
Mia check though. He's
31.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Crash and Bash, he may stop pretty quickly. The big boys often do. They don't slow down, they just stop.
Well, the good thing, you look at this, the brains trust in charge. You have people who have come from dynastic backgrounds. McRae and Lepage played at Brisbane where they won the 3 out of the 4. Bolton was around Clarkson when Hawthorn was dominating. He was also around Carlton when they were shit for a long time. So They know about consistency and that sort of stuff. There's that story about Lepage pulling the players aside and saying, you've won one, but is this all you want to do? So they got a really, really good focus in terms of...
Yeah, I think that's that whole change about that not over-celebrating, that you do have people that have drawn them back in to the focus. There's the Quaynor was back on the treadmill 28 minutes after the grand final had finished. That just shows that, there's no one's really taking the time off and going to drink their way through the off-season and celebrate. They had their few days and they were pretty much seriously back at it. And I think that mindset is they want another one.
Yeah. And the other good thing, so just going back to the game itself, is when Cameron got the goal and put him back in front? Yeah, it was. And then it was like, it's 5 minutes left. So time-wise, how'd you feel after Cameron got it?
That was my first, they're going to do this to me again, are they, moment. I reckon I started teetering towards, get that out of your head. We've been in this position a few times over the last couple of years. We do,
not even in that game.
We do manage this extremely well. And I think by the time I finished that thought, the De Goey goal, and I think that it's amazing that you can be a couple of points down in a grand final and it feels like devastation. But when you're a couple of points back up, you feel like it feels better to be in front.
Oh, always.
No matter what, because that you're then being chased.
Well, just looking at the game, so just going back to those final minutes. So when Cameron got it, the first thing I did was look at the clock. It's like, how much time is there? And it's like, okay,
5:36.
Yeah, there's plenty of time.
Like that.
There's tons of time. And then pretty much they went back to, there's people speculating that Collingwood fuck up to 666, so he threw it up. But this is what I sort of talking about 2-0-10, where no one really stood up and won it. You go to this grand final where Cox taps it to Dacos to Pendlebury snaps it, Dacos runs forward, Mychek goes for the mark, it's punched, Dacos rows it, he hears the goal event, and Dacos said he was going to just punch it, because that was their mantra, just keep moving it forward. But he's got him the call from De Goey, so in a millisecond, in much less time than I've taken to describe this, he's done the aerial handball, and De Goey's gotten the goal. And you look at that, you got probably your three of your best four players. Moore would be the other one. Dacos and De Goey and Pendlebury just all factoring in to stand up and win that game.
The amazing thing is just how quickly Dacos left that.
Yeah.
The kicking of the ball to be the interception of that. Who punched it down? It was.
They punched it off Mychek going for it.
Yeah, and so he's been intercepted that. Like, it's just, you've covered about 50 metres in about 2 seconds.
Well, I think it was Dunkley on him and he slipped, so that was like probably the worst time to slip, chasing. And then you get the other one. I don't know what Jared Berry was thinking in that, tackling side bottom after the mark.
Yeah, that was a brain.
But that was really one of those ones, and I think I've said it previously, it was like, no one could contest that wasn't a 50. That was just such a bad 50. So again, you get one of the elite players, and like side bottom, we used to criticise him quite a bit under Buckley. Been a totally different player under...
reinvented.
Yeah, like much more attacking. I could not stand watching him when he played under Buckley, where he just stream down the wing, stop, turn around and kick it 15 metres sideways. It did my head in.
The dinky little kicks.
And he took it on himself, which I think great players do, and I think he said he was going to look for Dacos, but he was covered. And he's gone for the long kick and he's goaled it. And then it was like, okay, I'm looking at that going, all right, I actually think we can get another one here. And I was a little bit annoyed where Chris took a mark about 60 out. And then Pendlebury said kick it sideways.
Yeah, because it went out to Howe and they tried to wind the clock down. I think that was a little bit too early. Watching it...
Well, it was more... I saw McRae speaking about the St Kilda game earlier last year, the Gavin round, at that fast Gavin round. And he was pointing out... McRae was pointing out all these moments where they could have just killed 8 seconds here, 9 seconds there. So it wasn't about like sort of whittling down the clock. It was just killing enough time collectively that it's taken it away from the opposition. So I think that's what Pendlebury was thinking. But the way Crisp was kicking, and that side had a little bit of a win, I reckon he would have got, and it would have put us up 16 points. But instead, they've gone back the other end, and then...
Well, I think, unless I'm wrong, that's the last forward entry that we have for the rest of the game.
No, there's one, I think it was after they got that one, but there's that one where it's just Andrews on...
On Cameron.
On Frampton.
Sorry,
yeah. And Frampton's actually probably in the best position to mark that, but instead of like going for the ball, he actually turned it around to check where he was, and Andrews sort of came forward and marked it. So, and that was probably the one he should have taken. and that would have killed the clock and all that sort of stuff. But I mean, you get that last goal they got from Danaher, you get that last 90 seconds, that advantage. I don't give a fuck. I mean, that's happened to us. Deal with it.
Yeah, it'd be... Yeah, look, my son was asking when we were watching the replay the other night. He goes, "What did you think at that time with the advantage thing being missed?" I said, "I don't remember it. It just happened so quickly. I don't even remember hearing the whistle. The crowd noise would have been fanatical in terms of loudness and everything. Like if there was a free called and you're watching the ball at that stage, you're not watching the umpire. It just looked like a natural flow of countering that entry. I didn't think anything of it at the time, that I missed anything. It wasn't only until I think we were watching the replay at the pub after the game that was brought up.
Well, interestingly, watched the game again with the friend I went to the game with and a couple other people, and we watched it with the SEN commentary, and they didn't even remark on it, so it just totally went past them. The Channel 7 commentary remarked on it, but it is that sort of thing. It was so frenetic that most people didn't actually notice it happened. But, I couldn't give a fuck. I mean, that shit happens, not just to us, but, in grand finals in general, sometimes shit doesn't go your way. Bad luck.
Shit often happens against us.
But it's also one of those things that it's ridiculous to pick on one decision and go, well, what about these other decisions that fucking went for them?
No, all you're doing is building that narrative, like the ones a lot of Collingwood supporters have about those one little moments that determined us losing the grand final.
I mean, what about that 50 against Markov on the wing, and that brought McCluggage within 50, and he had a shot and he got a goal. So, because it's at that time, the sort of people placed a lot more importance.
Yeah, definitely.
But there's some really beautiful bits of play. There's that one bit where Dacos is coming out of half-back, and most people would have just blazed away, and he just sort of turned around and he spotted someone between half-back and wing. Just in that insane pressure, in that insane pace of the game, he found someone rather than just fucking panicking and bombing it like Ginnivan. And...
But I think a lot of them were like that. It really shows that benefit of the 2 years of those playing the minutes type things, that you remain composed. And to do that under the weight of holding on to the lead of a grand final just makes that extraordinary at the time. But I think it just becomes part of their DNA almost now, that you've done it so effectively, apart from the prelim last year.
2 years ago.
2 years ago, sorry now. You've done it so well that it's just the way that you're almost muscle memorying through it now, that you've got that little extra time to look for an option rather than just throw it in your boot and bomb it long.
Yeah, I just sort of had you talk about that prelim 2 years ago. I mean, that was pretty much lost in the first quarter and a bit.
That bit, yeah, that side of things, yeah.
Yeah, so you can't always bank on these comebacks, and it's I don't know what the record collective winning total is to win the grand final in terms of the lowest it could be. I mean, we won our three finals by 12 points.
This would have to be close, wouldn't it?
Oh, you'd think it would, So you've won by 7, 1 and 4. So it's pretty insane to win by that margin. But, I mean, that last 90 seconds, it sort of had that half. They've been in this situation, we should win it. But the other half, it's fucking Collingwood. So we know what can... And honestly, sorry, it's going to sound horrible, but if they'd lost that, I think I probably would have just walked out, would have dumped my ticket in the bin on the way out. I would have just rang up, look, I'm not renewing next year. I can't do this. I can't keep losing fucking grand finals.
It's pretty composed. You just rung them at that time? Because there'd be someone manning the service desk.
But I'm just...
Cancellations.
Yeah, they're sort of saying, and that was a lot of our generation. They're saying that sort of thing. Just, I can't do a loss anymore. There's probably young supporters watching who are going, you're not real supporters. It's like, you go fucking watch the 8 grand final losses. It scars you.
This is true. I mean, I was talking to, I mentioned, I think in one of our previous rants that I caught up with Peebs inside the ground. We had a couple of beers before the game. And I made comment about just how study-faced all the Collingwood supporters are. No one's walking around looking like they're about to enjoy this day. It's just like, just don't fuck it up. Just don't fuck it up was written on everybody's face. A lot of the Brisbane supporters were pretty...
cocky.
Yeah, not so cocky. It's more jokey and relaxed, which certainly none of us were. It was a marked difference. Yeah. Great day, though. Great day.
It's brilliant. Again, that's the sort of way we lose grand finals, not the way we win them. So you'd hope this is a reinvention of the club. This is something I fucking hope for since 1982. I've kept waiting for them to sort of change the culture. And not, a lot of clubs try and do it. I mean, St Kilda's been a loser club forever. So obviously it's not an easy thing to change a culture. Collingwood keeps having a swing at it and keeps fucking it up. And I'll just say this honestly, I'm a lot more comfortable with the club being run by people where it's not fucking amateur hour with Eddie Maguire just being a really passionate supporter. And that's great that he's passionate, but not really a professional businessman who is not blowing up the salary cap by 150% to buy a fucking, to basically give Buckley every best chance of winning the flag so they can vindicate that succession plan. It's the management, as much as you've criticised them, they've really done well to sort of bring the cap back into control and to refocus the club. And credit the club, because I didn't think they'd turn it around in 2 years. I'm not talking about when I'm talking about credit the club, I'm talking about the guys like Paul Licuria and Graham Ray. Because they were already doing this before the new admin came in.
I think there was a sense that this stuff needed to happen, and there was probably people behind the scenes who knew it had to happen, but the roadblock had to be removed first. And I think once the roadblock was removed, the pieces fell into place pretty quick. Oh. I think the benefit also, though, is bringing the successful IP with the likes of McRae and Lepich and Bolton and stuff in there to cement those changes. The trouble is with us is we always go back to the favourite sons, and you're not bringing anything new to the table. I think once you bring some fresh ideas in, you can revigorate something really quick.
Well, credit to, they did an exhaustive coach search to pick McRae, which they've never done, ever, in the whole history of the club. They've just handpicked who they've wanted. And then recognising he's an experienced coach, they surrounded him with people who've been in coaching roles, like Lepich and Bolton. So they gave him, some support around that. So they actually really identified extremely well what the club needed. Where, you look at some other clubs and they might go for the name, not having the shot at him, but, Essendon's gone for Brad Scott because he's a named coach, and North's gone for Clarkson because he's a named coach. So it was actually good because, we did canvass the named coaches, but it was like, what's the right person for the right job at this time? And they actually found it. And I don't think they've ever done that historically.
No, and as I said before, the top three that were the runners, being McRae, Lepich, and who's the GWS? Kingsley. They all had very successful years as well.
Yeah.
Clearly, the choices we were making and the criteria that we were applying was the correct one, and it also benefited to other clubs. Unfortunately, one of them is full of filth, and hopefully they'll crash and burn this year. But yeah, clearly they were the proven quantity.
No, well, you can't. Well, they've won the flag, so we can't fault it. Any final thoughts about Collingwood's flag?
No, flags? I bloody love it. And I'm going to ride it all year.
Yeah, look, the cyclical nature of football is, hey, we celebrated now in, 6 weeks or something? You're back at it. And just hope we have the focus. Understand they're not easy to win. Someone tells me that you can't win them every year. But
you can fucking try, though.
Clubs like Richmond and Hawthorn and Geelong prove, well, you can win a fair few.
This is it.
when you're up there. So, I don't know, when you look at the landscape, you think, I don't know how much that's going to change in the year. I've been predicting Carl's going to come for 18 years. Hopefully they don't get their shit together. But, I think there's still sort of an opening there to remain, in contention. The one thing you notice with the flag teams is they tend to develop a bit of mystique because they know, fuck, we've done it, we can do it. So it'll be interesting to see what sort of Collingwood comes out. There's a lot of promising reports from training, but we'll get into that when we do a list management fixture rant.
Oh, we're doing that? Only brought 2 players in, that should be pretty quick.
Yeah, they got rid of that 19. Yep. Anyway, that's it from us. We'll be back. Not too far from here.
Not too far? Well, we're going to be sitting over there.
Oh, we're going to swap seats. Did we show you the new decorations?
Oh, what's this word?
Yeah, you don't see much of it.
What's this word?
No.
Is that the moon?
Later.
Catch. Hey, you fucked the year already.